Christopher Columbus was born in 1451 in the busy port city of Genoa on the coast of Italy. From the moment he opened his eyes, he could smell the salt in the air and hear the sea breeze rustling through the harbor. Ships of all sizes came and went every day, their sails billowing like great white clouds against the bright blue sky. To Christopher, these ships were full of promise and adventure, and he longed to be a part of their journeys. At home, Christopher lived with his father Domenico, who worked as a wool weaver and merchant, and his mother Susanna, who cared for the family with warmth and kindness. His parents taught him the value of hard work and patience. Domenico often said that steady effort would help Christopher achieve any goal he set his mind to. Susanna encouraged him to follow his heart, to explore his interests and to respect others. But it was the voice of the sea that called to Christopher most strongly. As a young boy, Christopher spent every free moment at the docks. He would hide behind wooden barrels and watch the sailors load and unload cargo. He listened with wide eyes to the stories they told, tales of distant lands with strange animals, tall mountains and sparkling rivers. Each story felt like a spark in his mind, igniting a dream that he would one day see those places for himself. When Christopher turned 10, his father arranged for him to work on a merchant ship as a cabin boy. This role was small, but it was his first taste of life on the open water. As the ship rocked gently with the waves, Christopher learned to tie knots, carry messages, and clean the deck. The work was hard and often dirty, but he did each task with care. He felt proud every time a sailor praised his effort. He knew that each small job was important for the smooth running of the ship. On his first voyage, Christopher felt a thrill as he stepped on the deck. The wooden boards creaked under his feet, and the wind tugged at his clothes. The smell of the ocean spray and the sound of gulls overhead filled him with joy. He loved the feeling of moving across the water, of leaving one place behind and heading toward the unknown. As the years went by, Christopher's skills grew. He learned to read simple maps and began to understand the patterns of wind and current. At night, he watched the stars and practiced charting his course by their positions. More experienced sailors started to trust him with small navigation duties. He recorded the direction the ship sailed, the speed of the wind, and the quality of the waves in a little notebook. Every entry was a lesson in understanding the ocean's moods. By the time Christopher was in his mid-teens, he was no longer just a cabin boy. He had become a sailor who could help steer the ship and decide when to trim the sails. He had learned to work with the tides and to predict weather changes by looking at the clouds. His reputation as a reliable and hard-working young man grew, and others began to ask his advice when they were unsure of their course. Yet Christopher was not content to stop there. He dreamed of doing more than following established routes around the Mediterranean. He wished to find new paths across the sea, routes that no one had sailed before. He imagined a direct path to the lands of spice and silk in the east, a way that would save time and open fresh opportunities for trade. Through all these experiences, Christopher remained humble and eager to learn. He helped his shipmates with their chores and listened to their stories with respect. He practiced patience, knowing that the sea could be calm one moment and stormy the next. He learned that strength alone was not enough. A good sailor needed careful observation, steady courage, and a clear mind. In Genoa, the boy who had once watched ships from the dock became a young sailor who understood their language. He could read the lines of a map as easily as he once watched the waves. His love for the sea had shaped him, teaching him the value of hard work, the joy of discovery, and the importance of dreams. From those early days at the harbor, Christopher Columbus set out on a path that would one day take him across the Atlantic, into history itself. Christopher Columbus had learned much from his years at sea. He knew the winds and currents of the Mediterranean, and he had studied many maps and charts. Yet one question burned stronger than any other in his mind. What if he sailed west instead of east? What if a direct route across the Atlantic could reach the lands of spices and silks in Asia? This bold idea filled his thoughts day and night. He imagined saving time for merchants and opening a new path to distant treasures. Eager to make his dream real, Columbus traveled to Portugal. Portugal was famous for sea voyages along Africa's coast. King John II's court in Lisbon was full of experienced sailors and map-makers. Christopher asked for a meeting with the king. He explained how the world was round and how, by sailing west, a ship could reach Asia more quickly. He spoke of trade winds that would guide them and currents that would carry their ships home again. He promised riches and fame for Portugal. King John II listened politely, but his advisors shook their heads. They had already sent ships down the African coast and around the Cape of Good Hope. They believed that the known route was safer than an untested journey into open ocean. Christopher's ideas sounded too risky to them. They worried about storms, the vast distances, and the unknown. When the king finally spoke, he thanked Columbus for his courage but declined to fund the voyage. Christopher left Portugal with a heavy heart. He felt disappointed but not defeated. After a time of reflection, Columbus set his sights on Spain. He traveled to Barcelona, where King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella had just completed the Reconquista. Spain was eager for new opportunities to grow its power and wealth. Christopher requested an audience with the monarchs. He stood in their grand hall, feeling the weight of his dream pressing on him. With calm confidence, he described his plan to sail west across the Atlantic. He spoke of untapped lands, potential allies, and the chance to spread Christianity. Ferdinand and Isabella were intrigued. They formed a committee of scholars and sailors to study Columbus's proposal. Christopher waited anxiously as days turned into weeks. He knew his plan was unusual, but he believed in the power of careful study and precise navigation. At last, the committee reported back. Spain would support his journey. The news filled Columbus with joy and relief. The monarchs provided 3 ships for the expedition. The largest was the Santa Maria, a sturdy cargo vessel that would carry supplies. The smaller Pinta and Nina were nimble and fast, ideal for exploration and scouting. Spain also offered about 90 crew members, chosen for their courage and experience. In recognition of his idea and effort, Columbus was named Admiral of the Ocean Sea. He was promised the title of Viceroy and Governor of any lands he might discover, along with a share of 1/10 of the profits. With support secured, Columbus felt the first true spark of hope for his western voyage. He had faced rejection, yet he remained determined. His dream would no longer be only his own. Now, with the backing of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, he was ready to set sail into the unknown. The ships would be prepared, the crew would be trained, and the supplies would be loaded. Soon, Christopher Columbus would stand on the decks of his ships, looking westward toward a horizon no European had yet crossed. Christopher Columbus stood on the deck of the Nina at dawn, the sky a pale pink above the calm sea. To his left, the Santa Maria rode low in the water with its heavy cargo. To his right, the Pinta's white sails caught the morning breeze. 90 men had followed him into the unknown. Their faces showed excitement and fear in equal measure. Christopher felt his heart pound with anticipation. He raised his voice to speak to the crew, reminding them that courage and unity would see them through the journey ahead. As the ship slipped away from the Spanish coast of Palos on August 3, 1492, the sailors waved to those on shore, then turned their eyes toward the horizon. The wind filled the sails and carried them past the Canary Islands, where they stopped only long enough to make final repairs and take on fresh water and food. Then they pointed west. Solid ground lay nowhere in sight. The Atlantic stretched endlessly before them, a vast expanse of glittering blue. Life at sea proved harder than anyone had imagined. Each morning, the men woke to the same view of open water. They ate hardtack, dry, flat biscuits, and salted meat, their stomachs growling for fresh bread and fruit. Water was rationed carefully. Some days brought gentle waves that lulled the ships as if rocking them to sleep. Other days unleashed fierce storms. Clouds blackened the sky, and rain lashed the deck. Columbus paced the planks, calling out orders with calm authority. At night, thunder rolled and lightning cracked, but he stood firm, guiding his captains to secure the rigging and hold the ship steady. Seasickness swept through the crew like a cold fog. Men leaned over the rail, clutching their stomachs. Whispers of mutiny drifted across the decks. "Why do we keep going?" they asked. "What if there is no land?" Columbus knew that fear could destroy a voyage faster than any storm. He gathered his men and spoke of their purpose. He reminded them of the promises made by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. He told them of the new world that waited beyond the horizon. His steady words, spoken with gentle conviction, helped restore their hope. Bit by bit, the crew's trust in him grew stronger than their fear of the sea. Weeks turned into months. Christopher kept a careful log, noting the direction of the wind, the strength of the currents, and the speed of each ship. He observed floating debris, twigs, seeds, and sometimes pieces of carved wood that hinted at land nearby. He watched seabirds circle overhead, their calls echoing across the water. Each small sign filled him with cautious optimism. Then, on the morning of October 12, 1492, a sailor aboard the Pinta cried out, "Land! Land!" A hush fell over the ships. All eyes strained to see a dark line on the horizon. As the sun climbed higher, the shape of an island emerged. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, and waves lapped softly against a sandy shore. Columbus felt tears prick his eyes. He knelt on the deck, kissed the wood, and whispered a prayer of thanks. The three ships anchored in a shallow bay. Small boats were lowered into the water. Christopher, dressed in armor and carrying Spain's banner, led the first party ashore. He stepped onto the warm sand and fell to his knees again. He claimed the land for Spain and called it San Salvador, which means Holy Savior. The name reflected his belief that divine guidance had brought them safely across the ocean. As Columbus and his men walked inland, they encountered the native people of the island. The Taino, as Columbus later called them, watched from the edge of the forest. They wore simple cotton clothing and carried small bows and arrows. Their skin was smooth and their eyes bright with curiosity. Columbus offered them beads, bells, and colorful cloth. In return, the Taino gifted them fruits, fresh fish, and water. Though they did not share a language, they smiled and laughed together. Gestures of friendship passed between them like a gentle breeze. The first moments of contact were peaceful and full of wonder. The Europeans saw unfamiliar plants and animals, trees heavy with coconuts, birds with vivid feathers, and iguanas sunning on rocks. The Taino pointed to these wonders with pride, eager to show their new visitors the beauty of their home. Columbus noted everything carefully in his journal: the color of the fruits, the shape of the shells on the beach, and the sound of laughter under the trees. At sunset, the Spaniards returned to their ships, carrying samples of the island's treasures. They felt both relief and excitement. Relief that they had found land at last, and excitement for the discoveries that lay ahead. As lanterns shone on the rippling water, Columbus stood on the deck of the Niña and gazed at the dark silhouette of San Salvador. He knew that this voyage of courage and discovery would change the world forever. His dream had become reality, and a new chapter in history had just begun. Christopher Columbus's life was a journey of wonder, courage, and determination. Born in the busy port city of Genoa in 1451, he grew up with the smell of salt in the air and the sound of ships creaking at the docks. As a young boy, he listened to sailors' stories of faraway lands and dreamed of exploring them himself. His parents, Domenico and Susanna, taught him the value of hard work and kindness, while the sea taught him patience and resilience. At age 10, Columbus became a cabin boy on a merchant ship. He learned to tie knots, clean decks, and carry messages. Day by day, he watched the horizon and studied maps under the stars. By his late teens, he had become a skilled navigator, able to guide a ship's course and predict changes in wind and weather. Yet he was not content to follow well-worn routes. He imagined a faster way to reach the lands of silk and spices, sailing west across the unknown Atlantic. His bold idea first met rejection in Portugal, where King John II preferred the safer path around Africa. Undeterred, Columbus traveled to Spain and won the support of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. They provided 3 ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Niña, and about 90 men. Columbus was named Admiral of the Ocean Sea and set sail on August 3, 1492. Life at sea tested everyone. Food was simple and scarce, storms raged without warning, and whispers of doubt spread among the crew. Columbus stayed calm and spoke words of hope, reminding his men of the promise and glory that lay ahead. On October 12th, after weeks of endless blue water, a sailor cried, "Land! Land!" The ships anchored off a lush island Columbus named San Salvador. He met the friendly Taino people, exchanged gifts, and claimed the land for Spain. Columbus returned to Spain a hero, yet his story did not end there. He led 3 more voyages, each filled with new discoveries, challenges, and lessons. His life reminds us that dreams can become reality when met with hard work, courage, and a willingness to learn from failure. A deep lesson from Columbus's story is that true success often requires both bold vision and steady perseverance. In your own life, you can apply this by setting clear goals, taking small steps every day, and staying calm when obstacles appear. When you face doubts or setbacks, remember that patience and hope can guide you back on course. Congratulations on listening through this entire story. Your dedication to improving your English listening and understanding is inspiring. Now, let us reflect together. Which quality of Columbus inspires you the most? A. His determination to follow his dream. B. His calm courage in hard moments. Please comment A or B below to share your answer. If you enjoyed this story and found it helpful, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring English lessons. We also welcome your donations to help us continue creating free, high-quality content during these early, challenging days. Thank you for supporting our work and for learning with us.